Wow, you have a big collection of books back there.
Yeah, this is part of them. There's
Yeah.
two more shelves over there, and then a couple in my wife's office, and a couple in the bedroom, and one in my son's room. I realized that we had Quiet Loud back there, and I was so excited. I ran back to get it, and it's in pieces. We've
Is
had it
it?
for a while.
Yeah. How old is he again? Did you say?
I'm 8 now,
8.
so
Okay.
it's been a little while since we did Quiet Loud. We had
Uh-huh.
that one. We had Big, is it
Big
Big
little,
Little,
big little.
Big Little, and Toot.
Uh-huh.
So we had a nice collection because they sent me your middle grade books. I'm like, oh, middle grade author, wonderful. I'd be happy to chat with her. And these look charming. Wait a minute, I know that name. And I was sure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, already in my house.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm definitely was a board book author for a long time before I dove into the middle grade books. But yeah, the first 3 were Quiet Loud, Big Little, and Yummy Yucky, which all came out in 2003. So it's been almost 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had a little baby then who was 1. So now he's almost 22.
Well, baby went on for several books. Right? I saw there were some
Baby's still going, yeah.
20 of just last year, right?
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
still making them. Yeah.
And that's going to continue even after your middle grade adventure.
I think so. Yeah. Baby has a new friend that I'm calling Baby Bo. And that first book is coming out in June. It's called Splash. And they're playing at the beach. And it's kind of a summer book. And then there's one called Swoosh that's going to be a winter book. And then 2 more, a spring themed book and a fall themed book with Baby and the friend playing in all the different environments. Yeah. So I'm just keep going.
Well, this is the kind of quality stuff that I think esteemed reader or esteemed audience wants to hear about. When will those books be available? And we'll call this the start of the show.
The Splash will be available in June, I think June 10th or something yeah, it's available for pre-sale right now on Amazon, but yeah, that'll be available in June. And then the winter one will be a whole year later, and the other 2 will follow maybe year after those ones. I think so.
Ever foresee a time when you're not doing picture books?
I don't foresee that time. Yeah, I hope not. I hope I can keep doing them for a long time. Yeah, it's great. I love it. It's what I always wanted to do, and it's a great career.
Well, obviously, I'm hoping that the RIZZLERUNK Club is going to go on forever and be the first of many middle grade adventures that you're going to be putting out. But I hope those the baby books continue, and I hope the board books continue.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'd love to keep writing the RIZZLERUNK Club. It's based on myself and my best friend. We became friends in 4th grade, which I explain in the first book, and some of it's based on reality and some of it's totally made up, but it's kind of like the whole picture, the whole world is in my head from when I was in 4th grade and what I remember from that time about different stories. And then also when I was writing the first book, my kids were around that age. So I also got to see the world through their eyes and pay attention to what was happening with them at school and with their friends and everything, and use that as well to write authentically toward them.
I had heard, and correct me if this is apocryphal, but I'd heard that the school was directly across the street from you at one point, so all the kids were coming over to see your son, and
that is very true. Yeah. It wasn't across the street, but it was down the street, so a lot of kids were over at my house all the time. Yeah, and they would just come in and they'd be playing, or we even did, like in the first book, they make some bracelets out of candy wrappers, so I just made that up. But then when the kids were over, I had them take a bunch of candy wrappers and make bracelets to see if they worked and everything. And there was also an episode with some frogs' eggs in the first book where I ordered some of these little beads that expand in water and practiced the whole thing. Not it actually has to do with clogging the toilet. I didn't actually dump them down the toilet, but but I practiced the whole thing to make sure it was plausible that it could actually happen. So it was pretty fun with the kids around, you know, kind of doing some research.
So you could kind of keep an eye on them and maybe do some quick sketches for.
Yeah. I took pictures of the events, so I have pictures of them, and yeah, sketches and stuff of the final products that they made. And also, one of my daughter's friends drew a bad drawing, purposefully bad drawing of a horse in the first book also. But then this book, when I was writing, they were in high school. So different time in the household, but you know, I'd been able to relive that age not too long in the past.
So when did you start? The first book is Best Buds Under Frogs, available now, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How long ago did you have the idea for this? When did you start working on it?
Well, initially, okay, so I decided I wanted to do that a long time ago, like when I first was starting to write, that I would like to tell those stories from because I remember fourth grade really well because we moved to a new school. We moved to a new house and I went to a new school. So that year, for whatever reason, is very vivid in my head because it was a change, I think. And then I met my best friend, who's still my best friend. So it was a very fun year. And we told some lies to each other that year that we both fessed up to much later in life. In the book, they had to resolve it by the end of the book. In real life, it took a lot longer. But so I'd had this in my mind, and the first book, or the first thing that I wrote down, was more like a collection of stories of all the different things that I had in my mind, you know, different stories from that time. But then it was either going to go in the direction of being a novel or being a collection of stories. And I kind of hadn't really done either yet. So I decided to write it as a novel. And of course, coming from writing, you know, boogers are yucky, burgers are yummy, boogers are yucky. It took me actually quite a while to really get a good story going. And I ended up taking part of the story and rearranging everything. So the story that I'd initially had in my head for the first book became the second book. So they had longer to establish their relationship. And then there was another friend that is also still one of my best friends, who was in the first book, who was our trouble-causing friend when we were that age. And so that's Jill in the first book. And she just moved here to Hailey, Idaho, to enjoy the mountains, but also to be right next to me. So it's pretty fun.
And to cause you trouble
We're
again.
still friends. She's forgiven me for writing the book.
When you've got friends from the fourth grade like that who are still in your life and you're writing about them, are they eagerly awaiting these manuscripts and then trying to keep you honest? Like, that's how you remember that? No. Let us tell you how it really happened. Or...
Not really. No. They're both going with the flow. But that was another thing I had to overcome in writing the first book, which took me quite a long time. Like, I would say, I think it took 7 years, maybe, by the time, because I was setting it aside and doing my board books and everything by the time I actually finished it. So, but I had to get over reality and make it into the story that it became. Like, I had to let go of what actually happened in certain situations to make it a better story. For example, the fact that we didn't actually resolve the lies between ourselves until we were in our late teens, I had to resolve by the end of the book. So there were little changes here and there that I made to the actual stories to make them either more believable in the book or fit the story better. And I think I was reading The World According to Garp, and he said something about an author writing about themselves. I can't remember what exactly he had said, but in the book, the character of Garp says something about authors writing about themselves being like very egotistical or something like that. And I read it and I kind of went, okay, I get it. Okay. I have to let go of the truth. It's either a biography or it's not, and it wasn't. So I had to kind of let go of the truth and then make it into a story. So the characters are pretty much based on our personalities, but then they also vary quite a bit from how we actually were.
John Irving has, for anybody who's looking for writing advice, he puts it freely in most of his books. There's sooner or later somebody's writing something that has thoughts on how they should be writing.
Yeah, I know. What a weird place. I was rereading, I think I read that book when I was still in like middle school or something. Not very appropriate for a middle schooler, but I read it. And yeah, and so I was rereading it because it had always stayed one of my favorite books, and I still thought it was, I still really enjoyed rereading it, but I was rereading it when I saw that. I need to find that quote again because for some reason it totally redirected my brain.
Hey, you need to quilt it onto something or frame it or and put it up in the house someplace.
Yeah, you're right. I should. Although it might not be appropriate to put up in the house. I'm kind of recalling. I can't remember exactly what he said, but.
I've got a John Steinbeck way over there, and I can't even read it from here, but it's from Grapes of Wrath, and it's just shut up and get to work. You ain't enough to bother God much from Grapes of Wrath.
That's great. That's great.
I like to look up that when I'm feeling very self-important about my writing. I look up at that and like, no, it's
yeah.
Bring myself back down. Thank you, Mr. Steinbeck.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I have some quotes in my studio too, but there's one article from a newspaper from the Seattle Times written by a business writer that I've had following me around since like 1990. If you want runs, you have to keep swinging away. And it has like 50 sentences of advice for being a good business person or being creative as a business person. And I've had that with me since then. I used to have it hanging up in my very first job, and it's still here. And it has lots of good little sayings that I can look at for inspiration. So
take your inspiration from wherever you can get it.
Yeah. And then another thing, there's one is a Bob sticker from when I was contracting at Microsoft. And you probably don't remember this software, but it was kind of like an operating system for which had the form of a living room, like kind of a pre-metaverse kind of space that ran on top of Windows. And so I made a bunch of the characters for that, as well as some characters for Windows XP and Windows 95, and I think, or Windows 98, I think. And the characters really, they wouldn't always function quite right, and they would drive people insane. Like, have you ever seen the little paperclip character?
Yes, Clippy.
Yeah, Clippy. I didn't make Clippy, but the guy I was sharing an office with made Clippy. And I made some of the other characters. Yeah.
I was starstruck when I saw you had designed Rover, because I remember Rover.
Yes, exactly. I designed Rover. Yeah. Actually, I didn't design Rover. Rover was designed by a different artist for Bob. But then I took Rover and animated it and made it 3D. And so I changed it, but I didn't do the initial design of Rover.
I've seen the original 2D because I was looking at it earlier today, and you made everything great about Rover great, I would say.
Thank you. I just don't want to take credit where credit isn't due.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so that, and then I have this little piece of paper that was from 3rd grade that says, My name is Leslie, and then it says who my best friends are and what I like to do. And then it says, I want to be an artist when I grow up. So I still have that hanging around too. So no literature quotes, but some other inspirational things.
I had read that you had taken an aptitude test in the 7th grade that recommended you go into what, forestry?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Went back and retook it. Do I have that story right?
I got the answer, and then I went back and changed the answers so I could get the answer that led me into an art career, because it told me that I should go into forestries. Like, maybe I remember maybe it asked, do you like the outdoors, which I did. And maybe it asked, do you like to be solitary or something like that? Like in your job, do you like to be social or solitary? And I said I like to be solitary. And so it came up with forestries, which would have been great. But I've always had this creative bug that needs to be expressed somehow or another.
I love this idea that maybe you're living this wonderful, just this dream artist life. Your books are widely available. Rover is still out there on the internet, and there's a part of you that says, I always wanted to be in forestry. Why didn't I go out to the forest?
Yeah. Well, I live in the mountains, so I get to spend a lot of time outside. So that's fun. But my sister's the scientist.
I wondered, I saw that your activities are mountain, your hobbies are mountain biking,
Yeah.
and skiing, and things I would think that would put your hands, if not your whole self, at some sort of risk.
That's
Take
true.
precautions as an artist, or it's just
No, just hoping for the best.
and I don't know how much mountain biking you're doing. I'm in my mind, I'm imagining a Mountain Dew commercial, but maybe it's a little bit more tame.
Oh yeah, no, not that. No, not that extreme. That's for sure. But you can get hurt if you're going fast downhill on dirt.
I know you can get hurt skiing.
But well, yeah, but I have been skiing my whole life, so it can happen, that's for sure. But generally, I pretty much stay on my feet.
But if you've been doing it your whole life, you've got a confidence that I here in Indiana, where everything's mostly flat, would not have on a ski slope.
It's true. Yeah, I've also taught skiing, so I know I taught mostly kids, but then I've taught a few adults as well. And the center of gravity for a kid versus an adult is just so different. So it's easier to learn as a kid for sure.
Gotcha. So once you've got that down, then you can pretty much take that on with your whole life.
Yeah.
I had also read your grandmother was a pastel artist.
Yeah. She started, she did some art in college, like some more biology type illustrations. Like there's this really beautiful pen and ink bird wing that she did, and she did some other stuff at that age. But then she was raising her kids, and my grandpa worked at Boeing, and they were moving around a whole bunch. Well, I think he had several jobs, but then I think when she was around 50-ish, like my age right now, she started doing art again. And she did tons of portraits of all of us, and just really beautiful pictures, nature pictures and stuff like that. So I have lots of her paintings around my house. And she did them in pastel, and then she would do like a beeswax coat over the top of them. So she never really, I don't think she sold them or did any shows or anything, but she created a lot of work.
And so were you doing art with her when you were young? And was that maybe an influence on you toward art?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. She would lead me in different projects, and like they let me paint one of their walls in their kitchen when I was a kid. And yeah, we did a lot of that.
Like just a solid color, or?
Oh, on the wall?
Uh-huh.
I painted a big flower. It was very cartoon-like too. I don't remember how long it was there, but it was fun to do it.
And then your father was a huge fan of Mad Magazine.
Yes. Right. So he led my sister and I into Mad at a very young age. Definitely. um, yeah, so he had a huge Mad magazine collection. And then the story goes, when he got married and was on his honeymoon, my grandma thought, well, he doesn't need these anymore, and threw them all out. So
Oh
his collection was
no.
gone. I know.
Oh no.
Yeah, she
If
thought,
that's the only one other than your
all
mother,
grown
that's
up.
unforgivable.
I know. I know. My grandma really didn't have very many flaws, but I think throwing out the Mad magazine was one of them. This is a different grandma, not the artist grandma. But yeah, so he got us started on those when my sister and I, when we were pretty young, and we just loved them. We got them every month. And I definitely learned to draw from Mad. I would copy the drawings and was heavily influenced by that sense of humor.
A friend of mine was cleaning out his house over the pandemic. So time has no meaning, but sometime in the last couple of years here, he found was a big anthology compendium of Mad, and it was all their parodies of Batman up through Batman and Robin. So all the Batman movies when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Sent it to me. It was just so thrilling, and the jokes were referencing things like I don't know, like Monica Lewinsky and the lady that spilled McDonald's coffee on herself.
Yeah.
Just like jokes I remember from him. We thought, oh, what a wonderful time capsule. This is just one of the most beautiful things I've had to read all this pandemic. Thank you, friend. Nothing like an old Mad magazine.
Oh, they're so great.
This is from childhood.
Yeah, and I was probably reading them a decade or two, perhaps, before that. So I don't remember those stories that you're talking about, because I was probably like in my 20s and maybe not reading them every week like I used to. But yeah, there's so many funny, like so many old movies I know because I know the satire from Mad Magazine, even if I haven't seen the movie. So when I watch the movie, it's funny because I'll have a sense of humor about the movie, no matter what it is, if I've read the parody. And also, I think my favorite artist in there was, well, two. One was Don Martin, who did all the, do you know who that is? He did all his hands were always really funny, and they had the big hair and these hilarious expressions. And then the other one I loved was I just had his name and now it's slipping my mind. It's going to pop back in my head. But I Jack Davis, and I used to draw, copy his cartoons and try to learn how to draw like that. So a lot of my art when I was younger, or my cartoons, looked a lot like Jack Davis's cartoons.
So you're like sitting down on something bright with a piece of trace paper?
No. I would just look at it and draw it and try to figure out like how he did all the facial parts and expressions and stuff. So yeah, no, I wouldn't trace it. I would just look at it and try to figure it out. So yeah.
Obviously, by 7th grade, you know that forestry is not where it's at. Art, some version of art, is where you're headed. And I know that you did advertisements and circulars for a while, right out of school. Is that right?
Right out of college, I was doing direct mail, and I was writing only. I wasn't doing the art, but it was at a direct mail advertising agency. So there was a whole art department there. So they would see my drawings because I would always draw during meetings and stuff. So they helped me figure out how to put together a portfolio and kind of get that whole side. Because in college, I had decided to be in advertising as a copywriter. So I'd kind of given up the idea of doing art at that point. Because graphic design didn't interest me as much as drawing, and I didn't really see how those two went together. Now, of course, I do, but but at the time, graphic design seemed more like, laying stuff out the old fashioned way, of course. And I didn't think I was as good at that as drawing cartoons. So I ended up going for the writing side of it. So then at that company, I was a writer, but the artists noticed my drawings and were helping me get that together. So then the next job I did was at Microsoft, where I was designing characters, but I wasn't writing, and I actually missed writing. So kids' books are perfect for somebody who likes to do both.
And you had self-published a book about 1993 or so about espresso.
Yes, espresso served here. I have a copy sitting right here.
Perfect.
Yeah, I still have a box of them in my closet. So yeah, so this is Linda Latte, and she's in a cup of a latte here with the Space Needle, because it was Seattle based where I was living, and espresso was just booming at the time, and it was everywhere. So there's a picture in here of, let me see if I can find it. There is a picture of, oh, I'm not going to find it. It's pretty funny. They had, I had a picture of like a lineup of stores, including like a dentist and a chiropractor, and they all were selling espresso. So, but one of my favorites is, oh, I think this is missing some pages. Maybe that's why I'm not finding anyone. So I'm missing my favorite page, but this one's pretty funny. This says, this will do beans to crema in 35 seconds flat. And it's the midlife crisis machine. So I worked on this with my friend Michelle, who is also Jill in the RIZZLERUNK Club. So she came up with the great lines like the midlife crisis machine, and I drew the pictures. So yeah, that was pretty fun, and definitely, a completely different experience than self-publishing now. But anyway, I just learned a ton by doing it. So people often ask me now if they should do it, and I just tell them, even though it's easier now, you're still going to be a publisher. You're still paying for everything. You're advertising it. You're doing every step of the work that the publisher does. And I decided after I've self-published that book that I wasn't going to do that again. And so it took me another 10 years, I guess, before my next book came out, because I knew I wanted to have a publisher. So
Well, the publisher part wasn't fun, but the creating the book, did you realize, oh yes, this is everything I've ever wanted to do right here?
Well, it was kind of a long process because I took a children's book class, and then I met a bunch of people who were doing children's books because of my friend at Microsoft, Kevin Atterbury. He's a published author and illustrator. But he wasn't at the time. He was aiming toward that. So he knew all these people and he'd taken classes. So he led me down that path. And that's when I decided what I wanted to do. But then it took me a long time to actually focus enough to, like, at first I just happened to have all this stuff sitting around. I was doing these guys. This is a new drawing of a dandelion person, but I had all these dandelion people that I was doing them all with little poems and stuff. But it was at the end of my children's book class, they said that I had a lot of potential, but I needed focus, which is kind of the story of my life. But yeah, so what finally focused me was having a child and reading. My son was really like between, I can't remember, but he started speaking pretty young. So all those toddler thoughts were available to me. And I was reading to him all the books for toddlers. And that's when I came up with Yummy Yucky and simplified my style to be really bright and bold lines. Like I was reading and then Peak Layden, who she has this really beautiful texture in her books. And influence kind of so, and then the talk speaking brought my language became much simpler, and so that's what finally got me published, was when I was able to focus.
Okay, so what's that look like when you're focused? How do you approach your work that's different than what you've been doing before?
Well, the whole time I'd been kind of playing with different styles and everything, different styles of artwork, and I'd still been practicing writing different kinds of books. I wrote like this long rhyming book that, well, actually it wasn't that long. It fit into 32 pages like a picture book, because it was after I'd taken the class, and I sent it to New York, and I heard back from people there that they liked it, but it needed a story. It didn't have a story, which of course I didn't accept at the time. I was kind of like, what do you mean it doesn't have a story? But it didn't.
Standard question I ask everybody. Leslie Patricelli, have you ever seen a flying saucer and or a ghost?
A flying saucer? No. I thought I saw a flying saucer when I was a kid, and we were in our new house out in Issaquah, where there were no lights or anything in Washington. It's totally changed now, but it was like the country, and so it was totally dark, and I think it was foggy, and I think probably just a small plane came by with two big headlamps on it, and I absolutely thought it was a flying saucer and ran from the dark into my house. But I think it was a plane. And then, of course, seeing the Tesla array fly by not long ago, the satellite array that SpaceX put up there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Seeing that go by, I was a little confused for a minute. But no, I haven't seen a flying saucer. And I'm not one to believe in ghosts, but like I say in the RIZZLERUNK Club book, my best friend, her house was haunted, and they definitely believed that they had ghosts there at that house. So there were lots of ghost stories, and they all still believe there were ghosts at that house. It was an old house.
Real, then.
Yeah, I was living in a new house. They were in an old house, like 100 years old, I think. And so things would happen in that house that they thought was paranormal. And they would all still stand by that to this day. But I actually never saw anything there. So in my book, I talk about how there were footprints going up the wall from paint, like a ghost had walked through the paint and then left footprints. And so in the book, there's a scene where I see the footprints, and I'm just totally confused. But in real life, I didn't actually see the footprints. I just knew about them.
Let's talk about your transition from working on board books to now full middle grade. Of course, there's a lot more illustrations in the RIZZLERUNK Club books. I mean, almost like every page you get some kind of doodle, or every other page at least. So a lot more illustrations, but they're in black and white. And they're not the full colorful process that you do for the board books, but there's a lot more of them. So which is a greater investment of your time?
Well, they both take a lot of time, but the paintings actually, I think I made that process of making extremely simple paintings about as difficult as I possibly could, because there's quite a few layers of paint, and it just takes quite a few hours to do a painting. So usually I'm cramming that in over several months and just working nonstop. And with the drawings, with the RIZZLERUNK Club drawings, I'm working on my computer. So I've done all the sketches ahead of time, which I can do anywhere. And then I bring them home and scan them in, and then I go from there and fix them all up and everything. So it's just a different kind of work. And it's not as, it maybe it is as time consuming, but not all at once, because paint's dry and you just kind of have to keep on going. So I ran a marathon once, and I always feel like I'm doing that when I'm doing the paintings. Like I'll look up and I'll be thinking, oh, I'm only half done. That means there are, each book has 26 pages in the cover and the back. So that's basically 28 paintings, except some are full spreads. So, and usually I do 2 books at once. So that's a lot of painting. So it's just a different process.
So when you've got an idea for a picture book, do you go to your agent, your editor with some kind of pitch? Or how is a picture book born these days?
Well, usually in my sketchbook. And they're the board books are born, either I write them out or I draw them. It just depends on what's going on in my head. And then eventually what I'll do is lay them out in frames and, get the whole layout of the book. Each spread, kind of a miniature version that's just on 8.5 by 11 paper. And then I'll send that for the board books. And then for the RIZZLERUNK Club books, I sent my first draft of the whole first book. And then the second book we just worked on later. So that was a different process of having them decide to publish the book, because they decided to do 2 at the beginning. So yeah, so totally different process for those as well. Like the RIZZLERUNK Club book I just wrote, I didn't have any drawings yet. Or maybe I did, but they were really rough, and they went through quite an evolution before they kind of came around to the black and white line drawings that are in there.
Okay, so that's coming along well after you've done multiple drafts of the text itself then?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, both books I wrote just on my computer. I just wrote them before I did the sketches. So it was kind of a separate process, I guess. But I'll have the ideas in my head, and then I'll just write them later.
So when you get to available now, esteemed audience, when you get to book 2, and you know what the book's going to look like, you know what the characters are going to look like within reason, does that allow you to be drawing while you're writing, or is it still 2 separate processes when you're doing the sequel?
It's still 2 separate processes, but I'm thinking of the drawings in my head. But I guess the other main difference between doing the drawings for the RIZZLERUNK books and the paintings is the paintings, by the time I'm painting, I've planned everything out ahead of time. The drawings are, even though I'm doing the finished art, I've already come up with it, but it's a much more creative. Well, that's not true. It's just more free flow because the illustrations are different. And when I'm doing the final art, it's more creative than it is when I'm doing the final paintings. Because the paintings I have totally laid out. I know exactly what I'm going to do. But the drawings are, I'm being more creative as I'm working on them. So they're kind of evolving as I work on them. Does that make sense? Like the paintings I do all ahead of time. I get everything laid out, colors picked, and I basically transfer it to a canvas. And then the bulk of the work is done after I've already done all the creative work. And all I'm doing is mixing colors and putting them on the canvas and listening to audiobooks.
Gotcha. So at that point, it's planned enough that you can be completely caught up in whatever book you're listening to while still getting your work done.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But the RIZZLERUNK ones, I can't do that at the same time because I'm working on my computer and I'm thinking more about the drawings as I'm drawing them. They're kind of evolving as I'm drawing them and doing the final art and everything. So it's too distracting than to listen to a book.
Well, I know anybody that's watching or listening to us can go to your website right now, and there's a video of you doing a RIZZLERUNK illustration with just what, like a Sharpie marker
Yeah.
on I assume a pretty nice piece of drawing paper.
It was just a piece of paper, pretty much. It wasn't a super nice piece of drawing paper.
Like a 3 to 5 minute video. It's not an all day endeavor. The initial sketch, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, drawing the characters like I do in that video, and when I sign books, I'll often do drawings. It's almost like my signature at that point, because I'll have kind of a specific image that I've drawn over and over and over again. And so that's what I'm doing. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's like a signature. Like I know how to do it. I don't have to lay it out or anything. It's just in my head. So I can just kind of start at one point in the drawing and then bring it around to the other point. But I remember that day we were traveling and I was in Boston at the publisher, and I tend to drink a lot of coffee, but when I'm traveling, I drink more coffee. So my hand was really shaky when I was doing that, but it was fun.
So on the normal course of events, you get an idea for the sketch, then you do the sketch, and then you scan it for all the people who are listening close for specific details on how they can do likewise. What kind of scanner are you scanning it in with?
I have an Epson 1200X, I think it's called. No, 12,000. 12, yeah, something. It's a large format scanner, so it can do up to like 11 by 17. And that's what I use. I mean, sometimes now, sometimes for the rough drawings now that I want to bring into my computer, I just take a picture of them with my phone because it's so easy. Because it's good enough, you know, if I'm going to finish it later on the computer, then I have a Wacom tablet. So it's about a 24-inch monitor that you can draw on. So that's how I work when I'm doing the drawings on the computer. I have a pen and a tablet, but the tablet's actually a monitor also. So I'll bring it in there and then I can just draw right on top of it.
Gotcha. So the original sketch is there, you're drawing on top of it. And when you're drawing on top of it, you're just bringing out details. What kind of things are you doing at that point?
Well, that's where I was saying I can get kind of creative because I have all these different pen tools and Illustrator that I've created that give me different line styles. And I do a lot of erasing of the lines and redrawing them and just making them, you know, just the way I want them. So, and there's so many fun tools in Photoshop. So I can, yeah, so I'm a little more creative when I'm doing that, but I'm still tracing over my original sketch. And my sketches are really messy. I'm not one of those artists who has a sketch pad with beautiful drawings in it. They're really scribbly. So it's kind of a process to bring it down to a final piece.
Well, here's a non-artist question. Obviously, all these are non-artist questions, but if you can draw directly on the screen and you're going to end up doing that anyway, why do an initial sketch and take a photo with your phone or scan it in to start?
Well, it's more creative. It's just more free in a sketchbook as opposed to thinking about using the digital tools. Also, I can do it anywhere. And I think I was telling you earlier when we got cut off that like I wrote Yummy Yucky when I was on vacation, and I tend to write a lot of my books when I'm doing something else. So and because it's so mobile with a sketch pad, I can be anywhere and focus on just sketching stuff. So it gets me out of my studio where I'm doing the final artwork. Not as much creative happens in my studio as it does when I'm just spacing out doing something else or scribbling or, you know, or just writing away or something on in my sketchbook. So
you bring your sketchbook everywhere you ever go?
No, I have my notes app on my phone, so I do a lot of recording of thoughts in there now and some writing. But my sketchbook comes, it's not always with me. I always bring it on vacation or if I'm going on a road trip or something and I know I'm going to have time to sit down and think of things. But I don't just sit down and start sketching every day or anything. I think you were asking me about my schedule too, and it's very random. I wish I had a schedule, but I don't.
What does a typical day look like?
Well, actually lately, unfortunately, for the last 2 years, I've been dealing with long COVID, or I think it's long COVID, because it was so early, I never was able to get tested. But so it's been a lot of ups and downs, and my days have gotten pretty messed up. Like they're just not normal days anymore. But before, I would usually go out and do something outside, like a hike or a ski or bike or whatever, and then come back home and work, or work in my studio and then go out and do something in the afternoon, active. And be around the house full of kids and all that kind of stuff. But now I have one kid left at home, a senior in high school, and we have an exchange student this year. So they don't require as much attention, but there's still a lot of activity in the house. Sometimes they come home with their friends for lunch and it's fun. So yeah, I guess, does that sort of sum up a day? And I'm always doing laundry in the middle of it, of everything else.
Do you do laundry just because it has to be done, or are you like me and you're like, oh, I should write this chapter, but that laundry desperately needs, I'm going to do as many loads of laundry as I possibly can to push off the writing of that chapter?
Yes, I'm doing some of that as well. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. And also one of my guilty pleasures is when I fold the laundry, I'll watch videos on YouTube and stuff. Or like catch up on the late night comedy. So then, yeah, so doing laundry is kind of fun for me. It's not really a chore.
I can't remember the last time I sat down and watched a late night television program, but YouTube monologues, pretty much a daily occurrence.
Yeah. Usually I'll watch the monologues now. Yeah. I was a little more obsessed with what was going on in politics and everything over a year ago. So I was definitely just like every night watching all of them that I could, to try to have a sense of humor.
Oh, is something interesting happening in politics? I must have missed it. My gift to myself here in 2022. I still enjoy the monologues, but I have a rule that other than Seth Meyers, because I love my closer look, other than the monologues, if my rule is that the budget is a person at a desk talking about politics or anything else, that's a skip. I can't have that in my life. It doesn't matter which political show it is. If the budget is the desk, then they're going to say the most exciting, most aggravating, most get me worked up thing that they possibly can, because that's what they have to offer. There's no CGI Cylons in the show. There's nothing. There's not going to be a gunfight or a car chase later. It's just going to be somebody saying, well, what if this indicates this or this indicates this? And I've sat through enough conspiracy theory videos because I'm a flying saucer aficionado that I recognize that, okay, we're having fun and we're spinning out, but I'm not being informed right now. This is not news. This is this is journalism. So any of that gets cut out.
Well, I definitely take the comedy news with a grain of salt, but it makes me laugh, and just laughing, is more fun than watching the other news. So I read the more serious news, and then I just only watch comedy news. Yeah. So have you seen a flying saucer, and have you seen a ghost? I'm curious.
Oh, the esteemed audience will forgive me because I'm here every week, and they will have heard. I have not seen a flying saucer that I know of. A couple of suspicious lights in the sky that could be yes, could be no, but automatically, if I saw it, I'd be suspicious because I know how much I want to see it. So it's got to be very specifically. Could not have another explanation for me to believe I'd actually seen one. My grandmother did see one. And I believed her, and I have believed her ever since I was a little boy. Plus, there's just plain there's enough smoke that if there's not some fire, I'd be tremendously disappointed. And the other nice thing about people trying to disprove an unknown is you can't do it. You can't definitively prove to me that there are no flying saucers. And if it should eventually, if somebody finds the way that they can prove that, well, that's fine. I had fun. It was a nice believing that was an option. But I think with the Pentagon coming right out and saying now that they are studying recovered flying saucer craft, I don't know why this is still a debate. I wish the stigma would go away so we could get people smarter than the YouTube conspiracy theorists in there having serious conversations about these. And that's happening some, but not as fast as I would like. When the Blink 182 frontman, I can't think of his name at the moment, when that's who's out there talking flying saucers, we could do better. What's Dr. Fauci doing when he moves on from the pandemic? Let's get him on this flying saucer program. Let's hear his thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows? I definitely believe there's alien life out there, and I like to think about that and what it might look like and everything. But whether they've been here, who knows?
It's entirely possible that this will be the only way in which I might compare myself to Arthur Conan Doyle. But it's entirely possible that this is just a modern version of his fairy photos that he was obsessed with. And so we can all say, well, that was a relatively intelligent fellow. Shame about the fairy photos. And maybe someday that'll be a note for me. Relatively intelligent fellow. Shame about his love of flying saucers. But I don't think so. I think there's enough presidents have come right out and said, yes, I've seen one, or yes, we have information about that. There's something. I don't know what it is. Just be that it's a CIA program to experiment with, I don't know, with mass media, or I don't know. I'm not smart enough to guess what the purpose might be. But there is a wonderful documentary that everybody should see that I can't think of about Richard Doty, and it's about CIA operatives actively trying to feed UFO information to popular ufologists. Like Molten How. The documentary is on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of what it is. But it's just do a search, esteemed audience, for Richard Doty, and that will make you extremely uneasy going forward, just about what programs the government might be up to, because we can do that stuff. We know that they're doing thought experiments, flying saucers, maybe yes, maybe no. The CIA definitely doing thought experiments.
I'm writing that down so I don't forget. My friend who is Darby in the book, Diane, she was really obsessed with Oumuamua. You know, the big Oumuamua, the big like elongated asteroid that came in to our orbit and then left. She was graphing the orbit and everything of Oumuamua, and then there was like some satellite moon or something that she just was wondering what, it didn't really make sense to her how it could have come in and done what it did.
So she thought it was under some type of intelligent control, possibly?
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. The name of the documentary, I looked it up because it was going to bother me if I didn't, is Mirage Men. So esteemed audience, if you're listening and you're curious, Mirage Men is well worth your time. And it's on Netflix as of this recording. Hopefully when you're listening to us, it will still be there. If not, do a search on one of the streaming services. You'll be able to find it.
Okay. I'm going to look that up.
As far as like flying saucer documentaries, those are a dime a dozen. plenty of those out there, or just go to YouTube. Just do a YouTube search for UFO videos and get ready. Grab yourself a bag of popcorn. You're going to be there for a while. There are so many videos of flying saucers on YouTube that they have to put them in batches for months of the year of when all these different flying saucer videos from around the world came in. And past a certain point, it's hard to believe all these people are trying to get attention and money because there's just so many of them. You're buried toward the bottom of the list.
I did just remember something that happened here a few years ago. And I was just driving on the highway and I looked up, it was in the morning at some point, and it was just a blue sky. And I looked up and it looked like a huge asteroid breaking through. I mean, just like a giant ball of light in the sky, which I assumed was an asteroid. And then I went and looked all over the place to see if I could find anything about anybody else seeing it. And I never did. And I saw it. And it was what looked like a very large traveling light. I forgot about that. And I just assumed it was an asteroid. I didn't think about it being a UFO, but who knows? And then another.
Have the phone camera and get yourself.
I didn't have my phone. I was driving, so I just saw it and I just couldn't believe it. I thought that had to have done some damage somewhere, and there was nothing about it. Odd.
I know that you were a big Stephen King fan when you were younger. So I wanted to make sure I asked, beyond the Patterson puppies and the Midnight Monster Party, had you thought about writing something scary, either for children or for middle grade?
Well, I included some ghost stories in the RIZZLERUNK book, so I definitely have a tendency to think that way, but I never thought of writing horror books. That wasn't something, but I always really enjoyed reading them with my kids and scaring them. Probably maybe a little too much, but yeah, no, I never thought of actually trying to do that though. But I think Stephen King is a master. And I also love his book on writing. It's one of my favorite writing books. Have you read that?
Oh yeah, many times. Yeah. I've got the audiobook where he reads it to me. So
I haven't listened to the audiobook, but yeah, I think that's a great book on writing. Do you like that one?
I love it.
Yeah. I remember he said he doesn't like adverbs. Therefore, I tend to avoid adverbs because Stephen King told me to.
The only thing where I get, with that book, one of the bits of advice he gives is start your story. Don't worry about plotting ahead of time. Just go where it's going to go. And fine. And as much as I love Stephen King, I've read enough of his books that had lousy endings, or maybe went a little bit longer than they really needed to. Some to mind where I feel like he just ran out of story by the end. It's like, whatever, you write the ending, esteemed audience, and walked away. And when I read his book and he's advising how to do what he does, like, oh, that's why some of your books end that way. Oh, that
I see. Yeah. Well, that didn't work for me either. When I was trying to write the middle grade novels, I definitely had to learn how to plot them out ahead of time or it wasn't going to work. Yeah, I forgot that piece. I guess I didn't take that piece of advice, but one of my favorite Stephen King books was Misery, because I just love reading about a writer writing about a writer. I think that's so fun. And that was just an amazing story for the #1 fan to end up with him captive.
I just started his newest. I had to put it on hold to read a couple of books for the show. There's a Billy Summers, Billy somebody, and it's a hitman that goes undercover as a writer. Yes.
Okay, I haven't read that yet.
Anytime I read Stephen King and here's another writer character, I'll go, okay, but somewhere in here, we're going to get at least a chapter or two specifically about writing that probably could have been a blog post. So you cut that out and focus on the story.
You don't sound as much of a fan as I am.
Oh, no, I'm a huge fan. I'm so much of a fan that I've read almost everything he's written twice, except the newest. And some of it multiple times through, because when he's great, he's really great. And when he makes mistakes, it makes me feel better about my writing, because somebody that tremendous can make these Tommy Knockers. Not a great novel.
I don't think I read that one. I didn't read that one.
You're better off.
Yeah, I will.
Hearts in Atlantis, I reread that one every couple of years. I reread it every so often, and it's got some really glaring flaws. Don't care, love it anyway. But when I can spot those, like, oh, look at this, and it's just so obvious, because it's like listening to a great singer hit a wrong note, and like, oh, the equipment's there. This is an incredible artist, and that's where they made the mistake. And because I maybe catch that, or at least I think I can, that will help me inform my own writing and also calm me down a little bit when I make my mistakes. Well, Stephen King makes mistakes, so it's right. That guy's not perfect. There's no way I'm going to be perfect. So
yeah. Well, he's prolific too, but I saw him in person once in Seattle, and he came out. It was a big audience, and he came out and he started his presentation by telling you the statistics about the likelihood of somebody being in your dark car in the parking lot when you get back to your car, of somebody being hiding in the back. And then he said, if they're not there though, and then he gave you the statistics of somebody being in your house when you got home. So that's how he started his presentation, which was just perfect. Just scary from the get-go. Yeah, pretty funny.
That sounds like the kind of thing that gets a nice chuckle during the presentation, but then later, when you're heading to your car, you're heading home.
Luckily, I've forgotten the statistics. But I think about it. You're right. I think about it.
Nice little parting gift for the audience afterward.
Yeah.
There was I couldn't tell you which book it's in now, but there was a phrase he used that somebody has to win the lottery. But of course, it could be, you're about to die in some horrific way that you wouldn't have thought so, but somebody is going to.
Right.
So I think about that frequently.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah, I do. And then I try not to think about that.
Wait, it's a really nice way to avoid thinking about what I'm actually concerned with.
Oh.
There's always death. I may or may not be able to figure out a specific problem that I should be focused on, but if I can think of, what if an asteroid hits me? Well, that's going to trump any problem that I was thinking about. And so this is a wonderful distraction.
I see. I like that. Yeah.
It's also a good way for me to delay or procrastinate. This, for all we know, this might be the last night we ever have. So let's make the most of it. The asteroid might hit.
Cheers. Cheers to that.
So, well, now that we've got the two RIZZLERUNK Club books, are there plans for a third, or where are we at in terms of when we'll know if there's going to be more, or there's going to be another middle grade story?
Well, I hate to say it, but I think it depends on sales. So I definitely would love to do another one. I know my editor would love to do another one. So if it makes sense, we'll definitely be doing another one.
Well, good news, you're on this show, so I would think the sales are almost guaranteed to follow. My understanding of how that works.
Yeah. I mean, mostly writing books and publishing, as you know, is like fun and creative and everything, but then it always comes down to that in the end, doesn't it?
Well, do you have like a list of genres you yearn to write in, types of stories you want to tell, or do you just kind of take them as they come to you?
Yeah, I kind of take them as they come to me. I mean, I love these characters, and I could keep going on with the elementary school topic for a long time. I love graphic novels, and I definitely think about trying to do one, but I haven't ever put anything down that I think would be like, I even thought of doing the RIZZLERUNK books that way, but it just didn't come naturally to me. It came more naturally to write. So as much as I'd love to do a graphic novel, I'm not sure if I will, but I love them. Other than that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll get grandkids one day and they'll inspire me. But I also have lots of stories stored away in sketchbooks, and I've thought of doing a poetry anthology also. I've been working on some poems, some silly poems that I think would be really fun.
So like a Shel Silverstein type of for
Yeah,
fun?
that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. I've been reading those, you know, kind of researching, and they're so good. They're so good. They're such masters of that, the ones who do it. So I'm going to give it my best and see what comes out of it, but we'll see.
Well, you mentioned the Dandelion people from way back when that had poetry involved as well.
Yeah.
Have you been writing poetry more or less your whole life, or when did you start writing poetry?
Well, I don't know that. Yeah, well, in 5th grade, actually, I had this teacher, Mrs. Bachman, who loved poetry. And we actually skipped a lot of learning doing poetry that year, which my parents weren't too happy about, but I was totally happy with that, except that she did not like rhyming. Any rhyming was not a poem. So, so I remember how much I disliked that, because my favorite poems were all the ones from kids' books that rhymed, and I just loved those. So I think I've kind of stuck with that the whole time since then. I just think I love writing rhyming poems.
That seems like a natural fit for you.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think it is. Yeah. But do you have a schedule? I'm curious, because I just find sometimes it takes me so long to get something done, and I have to set my mind to it.
I have a schedule that I aspire to.
Yeah.
A schedule that I keep, goodness no, but an aspire to schedule, absolutely.
Huh? Yeah.
As we record this, I was supposed to have finished the final revisions on one book and started the next. And it looks like that's probably going to be next week instead of this week, which is really inconvenient because I'm leading a workshop tomorrow. And with my workshops, they go for 5 weeks. And every day during the workshop, I report to the students, and the students report to me what they wrote the day before and what they read the day before. So it's really convenient if I have a new project to be drafting when I start this workshop. But because I'm a little bit off by a week, don't mind. I did a bit more of a rewrite than I had anticipated, which ultimately lends itself to hopefully a better book. But it's an aspire to schedule that's going to throw off my first week of the workshop a little bit, and it is what it is. And I think an imperfect something is better than a perfect nothing. So get going, do the best you can. And if I'm behind on my schedule, but I'm still producing new books every year and new stories, well, then if I wanted to be that schedule, I'd have stuck with just doing finance all day and stocks and bonds. And by God, that has the opening of the market, the closing of the market, the opening of the bond market. It's really easy to stay on schedule if I want to be boring.
That's what you did before.
Yes.
Is that what you did before you were a full-time writer and podcast?
Yeah, full-time writer, podcaster, a little jack of all trades these days.
Teacher. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you find this, but as a creative person, I don't like structure, but I get a lot more done. Like when I have a job that I have to go to, I'll definitely be productive. And then you can leave it behind and come home and everything. But I am not able to make my writing job quite like that. It's just kind of always there. So as much as I dislike structure, it's also helpful. But I'd prefer to live without it and be able to be creative all the time in my job.
Well, there's only so much laundry and YouTube monologues that can happen during a day. So obviously there's stuff you have to do for the kids and things, but you I mean, what makes you feel good at the end of the day? Like today, obviously, you talked to me, and that was boom, met every goal as an author creator.
Definitely, yes.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
what does tomorrow look like when you go to bed? For tomorrow to have been successful, do you feel that you have to have been creative in some way? Is there some sort of milestone you want to have passed?
No, I'd say I operate more on deadlines. That's a good thing about having a publisher. And but yeah, no, I it's kind of free flow. So I think more important to me is like is getting outside and maybe doing something social. Like if I've done those things, I feel good about my day more than if I've gotten a bunch of work done, although that feels good too. It's just the balance is good, I think. Yeah, so this is my social time, so this is great.
Well, I know that obviously you've been steadily prolific. Your work's available, abound, and then I know you also do, well, pre-COVID. You did lots of traveling, lots of presenting,
Yeah,
lots of author work. So somewhere in there, I imagine if you sat for like a whole week and just watched Netflix or did something, and then maybe hung out with friends, how long could you get away with that before you started to feel the draw, that compelling force, whatever it is, that I have to create something?
well, that's a great question because when I was a lot younger and before I was published and just had that desire, you know, that I didn't know where it would lead or how to get there, I was very focused on trying to, you know, get to that place. And then ever since I've been published, I'm much more deadline driven. So luckily I've been able to be consistently published all these years. So so I work, you know, I always have a project that I'm working on. And then, like I said, a lot of the time that I think of my ideas, I'm doing something else entirely, like outside, like, you know, going for a walk or skiing or riding on an airplane or whatever. But those are my most free. That's like the time when I can really focus on my thoughts and come up with new ideas more than sitting in my studio and working. So I think it's important to have that balance. But deadlines definitely help me get stuff done.
Well, when you do have those ideas, do you write them down for later, or do you let them
Mhm.
fight it out in your mind until whatever one you remember the longest is obviously the one you're interested in?
Yes, I mean, sometimes I just am forming the idea in my mind while I'm doing other stuff all day long and for a month. And I know, don't write it down, but I'm thinking about it and thinking about it. And then eventually I'll find the time to sit down and put it all down. So yeah, I carry it around in my head a lot.
So when you sit down to write it out, is that just a matter of taking dictation at that point? It's pretty well formed, or?
No, it's creative to write it down also, but I'll have a pretty decent idea of what I want to do. So like, but like with the RIZZLERUNK clubs, those books, it was different because the first book, as I said, took me so long to write. The second book I wrote in like 6 weeks, I think, because I had already figured out my format and, you know, done all that. Then I just sat down and had a total creative writing session. It didn't even take 6 weeks. It took like 10 days to write the whole first draft because I just sat there and just wrote the whole thing. And it was, that's how I did that one. And then we, of course, worked on it and my editor helped me make it better and everything. But it was a quick writing process and super focused. So it really just depends.
So that 10 days, does that draft, is that part outline, part draft, or are most of the interactions that are still there
Well,
now?
I had an outline in my head. I probably had an outline on paper at that point. of how I wanted the story to flow and everything. So I'd already done some work, but then when I sat down to actually write it, then it only took 10 days. So it was a totally different process than writing the first book.
So what does that 10 days look like? Is that you get up in the morning and start writing and you don't stop until the evening? Like, oh, I should have eaten lunch somewhere in there. Or
Yeah.
what was your day?
I was pretty much sitting on the couch in the living room, ignoring everyone around me and everything going on. Yeah, for 10 days. I mean, I went to sleep, but yeah, I was pretty much just focused on it, getting that done. But board books are kind of like that too. Like sometimes I'll just write one and it's pretty much what it ends up being published. And other times it will be a struggle. You must find that sometimes too, right? Like sometimes it just comes out and it's just right. And then other times you're just in pain over the whole process, trying to get it right.
Nope. Each day is perfect. Like I'm taking divine dictation, and by golly, I just fire them off when no. Of course, there are good days and there are bad days, but those good days. I haven't written a book. I don't think I've written a book in as short as 10 days. I've written them in a relatively short period of time for me, but I'm kind of slow in plotting on most things I do, including writing. But that 10 days, you must just be on fire. That must just be kind of the sole focus of the universe. And that's got to be such an incredible experience. That do you find that you're chasing?
Right. That is an incredible experience. I totally love when that happens. Just getting in that creative space. And yeah, that's an amazing experience. I probably didn't go outside or socialize, but it was an amazing experience anyway.
The real friends will be there when you're done.
Yeah.
You have the same friends from 4th grade. I'm sure you're finding time to socialize.
Yeah. An artist's path there is no path. I mean, like when I got out of college, I kind of went down a path briefly and then left that path and didn't know what I was doing for a long time. So you have to kind of find your own path. You know what I mean? Like if you go to med school, then at the end you'll be a doctor. But if you decide to do something creative like art or music, and you're not doing it with an organization or something, you don't know exactly how that's going to turn out. So you kind of have to just figure it out.
So when did you have you had that moment where you said, okay, well, this did in fact work out. I am an artist. Look here, I've made a life for myself, and it's official. Was it the first book, second book? When did that happen for you?
I don't know. Somewhere around the first books. Yeah, maybe. Because I knew I would do more. I knew once I had that, baby and the style and everything, and I had so many ideas. I just maybe it was after I got the second books published that I thought, okay, I can keep doing this. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I still think, should I be exploring something else? I don't know, because it's always up in the air as an author.
What would you explore if you weren't going to do another middle grade book or another board book? What would you do instead?
Cartoons, maybe. Not anything. I wouldn't join a company or anything at this point, unless it was something really exciting and strange, like the company that my friend's creating. But yeah, no, I know. But you know how you just have, I don't know. I just sometimes think about what else, I would put it like this. Like when I go visit a place, I am always thinking, I think I should live here. Like maybe this is a place where I could live. Or so when I see people doing other things, then I think maybe this is a place I could do something else or whatever. Like I wish I had like 100 lives. And of course, if I did have 100 lives, that wouldn't be enough. But yeah,
thing
So
about creating fiction, right, is you cheat a little bit. You get to live your characters' lives, and hey,
you're
that's
right.
a couple weeks
Yeah,
for a bit.
yeah, that's true.
This has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. For tonight, my last question is always some variation of if there was some bit of advice you could go back and give to yourself toward the start of your career, middle of career, wherever it would have been useful that might have made easier your path and might make easier the paths of anybody who is watching or listening to us now, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Well, one time one of my friends said to me, be careful what you wish for because it will probably happen. I think that I think, and I guess that's not entirely relevant because I'm really happy with what happened, but I think it's kind of true. Like if you wish for something enough, I think you can kind of, I was pretty stressed about making it happen. And I think I would tell myself to just relax and know that, if you keep at it, it will happen. And to, and just to, I think that's what I would say. It's just trust yourself and your ideas and see where they take you.
Where can esteemed audience find you online, follow you on social media and all that good stuff?
If you go to my website, which is lesliepatricelli.com, that's my website. And then there are also links to my social media. And I'm working on a site right now for the RIZZLERUNK Club that I'm hoping to have some material up there for adults, like maybe teachers or librarians who are reading it with their class and want to talk about. The first book talks about making decisions and making your own decisions, even when other people might be leading you in a different direction, and negotiating friendships. And the second book is focused on lying, which I think is a super interesting topic for elementary school age kids, because most of them do that. I mean, most everybody does at some point. And in the book, I was not ever going to be somebody who told lies when I was a kid. Like, I just didn't. But then when something happened, I did. So it's about dealing with that. So on that website, I'm just hoping to include a lot of information about that kind of thing. And maybe like some fun stuff and some fun stuff for kids, like maybe like some fun interactive stuff. So that's coming, but it's not there yet. I might expect. But you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I have an author account on Facebook and I have a Twitter account, but I don't use that as much.
That one's at Yummy.
At Yummy Yucky, yeah. Right.
As always, esteemed audience, for interviews with all the world's best authors, literary agents, publishing professionals, head to middlegradeninja.com. Download your free copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. It will change your life. And God willing, I'm alive. I'll see you next week.